Hello and welcome to this Reviewers Roundtable for Astro Bot. I am VGC's Jordan Midler, joined by VGC's Andy Robinson and VGC's Chris Scullion. It's an all in-house job. We'll be reviewing Astro Bot, but don't worry, there will be no spoilers here, even when we're discussing things that have been shown in pre-release marketing material. For some reason, we'll be delicate with it. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. I'm very tired. I hammered, like after work, I hammered the last kind of few levels just so I could reach the end before coming on. So yeah, I'm fully versed.
Yeah. Andy, you have not only been playing the game, you have been in the belly of the beast at Team Asobi. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm also very tired, but mainly because I'm jet lagged. I haven't actually finished the game. So
you've got a better reason to be tired, to be fair.
Yeah, so I'd say don't spoil it for me, but the creative director just showed me the ending of the game.
Nice.
While I was there, which he humorously caveated before with, just you don't want any spoilers, kind of look away, and then he was like, "Yeah, you can play as Kratos." Yeah. Anyway, here's the ending of the
game. That's quite surprisingly part of their pre-release stuff, but let's get into it. So Astro Bot is Team Asobi's first full-length non-VR game, and it is the follow-up to Astro's Playroom, which is the pack-in title for PS5. The conceit is Astro and 300 bots are traveling the universe in a big PS5, and an alien breaks the PS5 and sends them all asunder. It's up to you to rescue them all. 150 of them are references to PlayStation and PlayStation adjacent characters. We'll talk about that later. There's some that are very much ones that you would not associate with PlayStation, but these bots are spread across 90-ish levels. There's about 50 full-size levels and then about the same amount of challenge levels. We usually start these with a couple of sentence thoughts. Chris, how are you feeling on Astro Bot?
I think it is absolutely fantastic. It would take something ridiculous to beat it as a potential Game of the Year candidate. I would say that it's the fact that Astro's Playroom came before it maybe dampened a bit of the surprise for me, because some of it, the more exciting bits tend to have been done in that first. But that aside, it's like a pretty close to flawless platformer, I would say.
Andy, couple of sentences for you on Astro Bot.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I think the question before this game came out was, could they stretch the super imaginative type kind of playroom 3-hour experience into a full release, and they've absolutely done it. Obviously I got to see behind the scenes last week to see exactly how they kind of go about coming up with so many ideas in quick succession. I'm sure we'll get into that later. But yeah, if this had Mario in it, you wouldn't blink. It's absolutely the best, non-Nintendo platformer maybe ever. That's actually pushing it. If you go back to the 90s where there are a lot of platforms were going kind of an adventure route. If you love a Banjo-Kazooie, a Jak and Daxter and stuff like that, this might not scratch the itch, but certainly modern. It's the best modern non-Mario platformer, 100% without question. I don't want to say it's better than Odyssey, which is obviously the latest Mario 3D, but it's definitely as good, in my opinion.
For me, by the end, it just clipped Odyssey. I think it's Tiger Woods, when he was asked if he wanted to be the greatest golfer of all time, he was like, no, but I want to be in the conversation. That's the goal. And the fact that this game is so easily in the conversation that you can say one way or the other, I prefer Odyssey, I prefer Astro Bot, is a real kind of testament to how good it is. I think that the keys to this game is, it would be an amazing platformer without all the PlayStation stuff, but the PlayStation stuff really elevates it in the way that they're reverent to areas of PlayStation that PlayStation itself has seemingly completely ignored or have moved past. It's kind of appropriate that in the same week that it's announced that their new live service is being shuttered after 2 weeks, that they have this thing that's such a kind of emblematic of what people love about Prime kind of PlayStation. And I just think it's an amazing experience. We got it on a Friday morning, and by Saturday evening, I'd platinumed it. I could not stop playing it. And if there was the same amount of content again, I would have just kept playing it. I think the platforming is so incredibly tight. The speed with which it introduces mechanics and throws them away is ridiculous. But we'll get into all of that. Chris, on the kind of rescuing bots conceit, the slight collectathon about it, there's 3 puzzle pieces in most stages. There's 8 or 9 bots in most stages. 3 of those are usually PlayStation cameos. How did you think that was balanced? Did you think there was too much to collect? Did you think it was a bit easy? What did you think?
I was fine with it. I think that's the only kind of thing that for me brings it slightly lower than Mario Odyssey. And again, that's hardly a criticism because you're comparing it to one of the greatest games ever made. It's the difference between like a 95 and a 98. I mean, it's crazy, but for me, as it got near the end, it started to get the tiniest bit repetitive. Just going, okay, well, I need to find them again and get the puzzle pieces and that. A wee bit more variation that I would have liked, but it was never massively frustrating because there's this kind of bird thing when if you replay a level, you can spend some coins on a bird, which kind of is like a radar, which kind of starts beeping whenever you get near one of them. So it never gets to a frustrating point where you're never going to 100% the game because there's 1 or 2 that are really annoying you. There's always, it's kind of flexible in that regard. So yeah, it was fine. I think that's the one element I think that by the end of it, I was like, it started to feel the ever so slightest bit kind of repetitive. But other than that, like the fact that so many of them are references to PlayStation games was really entertaining, I thought.
For me, I was getting really obsessed with collecting all the bots because obviously that unlocks stuff in the crash site, which is kind of your main hub. Every time you go back there, all your bots that you've collected jump out of your DualSense and populate the area. There's also light puzzles in there to unlock more characters, but also the puzzle pieces are building things within the crash site. So there's the gacha machine, which this time gives out accessories for all those PlayStation characters. There is a kind of like wildlife area, a safari area that unlocks the photo mode. There is a costume area for Astro. So I think beyond the fact that I wanted to platinum it, I just found it very satisfying to pick off everything and all the different levels without it feeling like I wasn't collecting 50 things a level. I was collecting maybe 13 if you include everything all together. Andy, from what you've been playing, have you been getting to that stage where you just about finish a level and you see a missing dot and you're like, well, I have to go back now and try and find it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my OCD is firing big time on that. I agree with what you're saying completely. The PlayStation stuff elevates it. All of my favorite things about the game are probably nothing to do with the PlayStation stuff.
Same.
The level of animation on this game is incredible. The head of animation at Asobi is the guy who did The Last Guardian, did the boy in The Last Guardian. So, and you can kind of see that the levels of just the sheer number of idle animations. Like there's one for like different suits. There's one for like, you know, depending on the context, have you got the robots? Is it a hot level? Is it a cold level? Just the amount of personality in this game is just wonderful. And it's the most tactile platformer ever. You know, you layer on all of the haptic stuff, the controller haptic stuff. I mean, these guys are the absolute masters at this. And it's no surprise because they're, you know, when you go and visit them, you realize they're literally across the street from Sony Corporation. So the hardware team who make the controller prototypes were telling me they'd literally take them across the street, you know, in a carrier bag and hope they didn't get robbed. You know, and they would use these guys to make the gameplay demos to kind of prove, like for the proof of concept of the different features on the controller. So it's not a surprise that these guys are kind of the masters in implementing it because they literally helped make it. And you see that, like just the amount of ideas, like some of the mechanics in there. Just if you took the haptics out, it'd be half the game.
Yeah,
because it's so satisfying to like the bit. There's a bit where you use a chainsaw. You know the bit I'm talking about.
Yeah,
and it's like someone needs to make a chainsaw game. It's just brilliant. Like it feels like resist. It feels like you're like, oh, this is tough. Like just you wouldn't think less than vibrations on a controller could, give that much of a tactile sense. But it's brilliant. It's I could sit and feel the pitter patter of rain all afternoon quite happily.
I'm glad they brought that back. That was my favourite thing in Astro's Playroom, and I'm glad they brought that back. The bit with the rain. It reminds me of, and this is going to sound instantly, it's going to sound like a weird thing to say, but it reminds me of a Nintendo published Wii U game, in that when the Wii U came out, Nintendo had Nintendo Land and stuff like that, and then for a period there's just loads of third party stuff, and nobody was taking advantage of the Wii U gamepad and the asymmetrical multiplayer and all that stuff. And then Nintendo down the road would bring out something else which made great use of it, and it would make you angry because you would think, why is nobody else doing this?
Yeah.
And that's the feeling I got playing this. It's like, this DualSense has got all this kind of technical wizardry in it, and the three games so far that I think have actually used it well. I mean, Astro's Playroom, Returnal, and now Astro Bot. Like, nothing else is, from what I've played.
No, it's not come close. No, nothing else.
And so it's fantastic that it does it, but it's also infuriating that nothing else has come to that level before.
No, I totally agree. I think that you can see the reverence they have for. Obviously, Astro's Playroom was all about the kind of reverence for the hardware, and that continues on into this. There were so many times that, like there's not a lot, but there's a decent amount of like 6-axis motion control stuff for when you're doing certain things. That it's all super natural to understand. Very rarely will you have to have a box come up and tell you what to do. It's just like, okay, I'm holding a hammer, do a hammer motion, and it works. And it doesn't feel gimmicky because you use it and it's gone. So much of this game is, we're not going to give you even half a chance to get bored of this. Let me just get in here, go. It'll be different next time. It'll be different next time. And it's just so satisfying. Like once you complete a level, you get a part of the PS5. The whole conceit is you're like rebuilding the PS5. And when you're putting the PS5 parts back together, you're like snapping in a RAM and stuff like that. And it just feels great.
It just feels great. They're masters at this stuff. They're masters. Like, they were telling me, the creative director and the studio head, Nicolas Toussaint, he worked at London Studio on iToy. So he was telling me that there was a designer there who had this prototype kind of mentality, where they would prototype like things like quickly and often, which is not uncommon in a lot of studios, but just to the level that they've introduced it here. He was saying basically, like, Japanese developers are obviously known for their level of detail, but not necessarily for their speed. So it kind of, his argument was that it's this merger of ideas, and there's that international kind of spirit there. It's only 65 people, and he was saying 75% of the team are Japanese. So I mean, what's that? You do the math, like, it's about 45 people are Japanese there. So there's only like these like less than 20 international people, but they're in lead positions. Like, the lead animator is British, the lead artist is German, obviously studio head and the creative director is French. So they have this kind of combination of ideas where they have this incredible like attention to detail, and the kind of the Japanese heritage of making these wonderful games full of personality. But they come up with ideas on Post-it notes, very much like you hear Nintendo does, the Mario team. A lot of similarities there. They come up with tons and tons of ideas on Post-it notes, and they pick the best ones. And basically, their team are given 2 weeks to turn them into working prototypes, like individuals. So even though they've got 65 people, they're very, very picky with who they have there. There's a lot of people with multidisciplines, like programmers who are, can have a hand in art and sound, and the same for like artists who can design, and they showed me some of the prototypes, and they're barely changed from the final game. They make them in 2 weeks, and they got animation, they got sound, they got haptics. So they were drilling into me all the time. The people they have really are game-minded people, and you can tell from when they show you these prototypes they make in 2 weeks, they know exactly what they're doing. And then the next step of this is that they test all this stuff frequently with internal studios. And they were telling me they even have software to track where, like, say they give like London Studio and Media Molecule and people like that, they've played through Astro Bot, start to finish pre-release. They'll be tracking stuff like where they're looking. They have eye tracking software like, oh, people keep looking over here in this segment, we should move that tree out of the way, and like things like that, right? They're like very focused on, they understand the game experience, what it should be, kind of across the whole team. It's a really, really impressive studio, that feels like bit custom built at every level, including their technology, by the way. So I spoke to Mark Cerny over DM before I went, like, tried my hands, like, hey, what should I ask these guys? And something that he highlighted, like their custom technology, which was bang on, really, is because everything I just said is only made possible because their technology allows them to iterate quick, fast. And the whole studio feels like it's custom built to make this kind of game, like a toy with loads of different ideas, loads of different mechanics. I reckon if you tried to get them to make a God of War or a Spider-Man or something like that, they'd fall flat, if not least because of their size. But at the same time, I don't think Insomniac or Guerrilla could make Astro Bot either. I don't think they have the culture.
It's funny. It's funny when you talk about like the engine, because like so many points in it, you just think they're just showing off, and there's no real, like, the amount of times the floor just gets scattered and things that are totally irrelevant. It's like you go into a room and like it just goes, okay, here, we're just going to cover the floor in diamonds, and you go, all right, and like my daughter's like running about like kind of punching the diamonds around and doing the spin attack and the diamonds and stuff. It's like, like you say, it's fun. It's so unnecessary. But technically it's really impressive, and it's a good laugh, which is like, it's fantastic.
The kind of and the opening level, which I think the opening level is one of the best opening levels to any game I've ever played. It sums up everything about the game perfectly. You go down this like flume, and there's just these big beach balls that serve no gameplay purpose. It's just they bounce around, and you're like, oh, this is just joyous. Also, every level, no matter where you go in it, there's a feeling of being rewarded, even if it's just coins. There's no dead ends. If you go to any part of the level and there's nothing there, there's a coin there. And I think they get the most out of what are quite small levels. If you were to go out and look down, there's like not a lot of actual landmass there, but they're so dense and they're so like,
they're toys. They're toys. They understand that the player needs to be rewarded at every step. If you scale something, you go, what's up here? You need to be a coin, there needs to be, or an animation or some kind of reward. And the game is just full of that in spades, right? It's just constantly rewarding, there's just so much feedback, not just on the controller itself, but in animations, in sound. It's a bloody brilliant game. It's the best, it's certainly the best family game that, non-Nintendo family game that a company's put out in a long, long time. It's one of the best PlayStation 5 games. I think it's going to do really, really well, and it deserves to as well.
I'll tell you one element that I think it beats any other game, like including Nintendo stuff. And I'll be vague so as not to avoid spoilers, but I think it has the best bosses I've ever seen in a game.
And it blows your mind as well. Like, to that point, right? They showed me one of the bosses, like the first kind of prototype that one person made in 2 weeks, and it's like the final boss, like pretty much. The animation obviously is better in the last game and the final game, and there'll be like minor tweaks in difficulty or whatever, but it's the boss.
And they've got some sort of magic trick that they can do where they can take, when you break it down, it's really actually still quite basic platforming elements. Like the boss fights, if you take away the gloss, are still kind of relatively simple patterns to learn, and all the abilities that Astro kind of learns throughout the game, when you look at them just on paper, they're just like a boost jump, a dash, like a harder punch. There's nothing special on paper, but the magic they apply to them makes those boss fights like enormous like spectacles, and makes these abilities feel really special, even though you've seen them a million times in other games, but you've not seen them like perfectly presented in a way like this. It's impressive. It's very impressive.
And I think they're really good at knowing, kind of in a Nintendo-esque way, where to focus their attention and where not to. I mean, stuff like a lot of those boss battles are, and again throughout the game, a lot of the assets are like reused and things like that. Like they're kind of like they're taken like from a kind of rescue mission, or some of them are taken from Playroom.
it's all you need. Like the level of inventiveness that they get away with just by as Chris said, I think it's indicative of how little time is spent in the levels with certain abilities, that when that's the ability you get for a boss, it's like, okay, this feels more substantial. I don't feel like I've totally mastered this. There's some abilities that are only used once and are used in the very last level, that they're just like, okay, we didn't fit this in here, so we'll fit it in elsewhere. But I think outside of those abilities, I think the general platforming is also very tight, because some of my favorite parts of this game are these challenge levels that are in each world.
Oh man, I was playing one of them before I came on, and I shouted like a swear word as loud as you can. Yeah.
Friend of the show, Lucy James, texted me being like, oh my god, this person is in the game as one of the cameo bots, and then half an hour later finally got them. Took me half an hour, and it's one of these challenge levels. It's like they are one life and you restart them, and they're usually themed around a platforming mechanic. So a few of them use like a rolling ball, and the ball goes like faster and it's kind of clumsy to work with. Other ones, there's one later in the game where you use a rubber duck to like change lava into like solid ground to run on, and one of those genuinely took me like 2.5 hours because it was so frustrating.
It's very Mario Galaxy.
I want to do 10 more.
It's very Mario Galaxy, all of it.
Yeah. And that is something that I wish there was more of. They're doing the speedrun levels that everyone loved from Playroom. Like, that is coming, so I'm not going to hold that against them. They've already said that's on its way, but more of that challenge stuff would be great. Chris, do you think that it needs more stuff that's just like raw platforming, or do you think the balance is correct between stuff that's not pejoratively gimmicky, like gimmicky in a good way, versus you've just got your jump, you've just got your hover?
I think the gimmicky stuff is fine because they've balanced it quite well. Like, other than the kind of challenge stages, most of the gimmicks tend to appear at the end of each world. Again, without spoiling much, that's each world ends with like a gimmick, and it's a nice kind of change of pace before you get back to the usual collecting stuff. It's not like, it doesn't feel like they're just throwing a million ideas at you. Like, there's a lot of ideas in there, but it's not just throwing a million things and seeing what sticks. All the ones that's there is high quality. And then you'll go back to the platforming for a while, and then it'll throw something else, and then you'll go back to the platform for a while. It doesn't feel like you don't get a breath. Like, the pacing's really good. So yeah, I think it's fine. I get the feeling there's more stuff to come, because we were discussed in the past, there's a few PlayStation characters who don't appear as cameos. Yeah. And again, we can't really name them because that technically is a spoiler, even though they're not in it, by naming who's not in it.
My feeling is if there's anyone who's not in it, it's not for lack of trying, is my opinion. And again, I don't know everyone who's in it and everyone who's not in it, because I've not finished the game 100% yet. But that's my impression. I don't think they're leaving anything.
But the thing is that some of them are like Sony characters, and I think it's for these speedrunning things. I wonder if there's some they're deliberately putting, like they've got clearance to use them, but they're maybe saving them for more content.
We put together like 5 or so of them without really thinking, and you could definitely get more. Like, there was Nico said on MinMax, they did their like rapid interview thing that was great, that Ben Hansen asked how many characters did you ask about and were told no, and he said that it was between 5 and 10. I think that's like maybe being generous, but there's certain stuff that isn't in it that I kind of assumed from pre-release. Like, I don't think it came out. I don't think it's a spoiler to say Spider-Man's not in it. One of the mascots for current first-party Sony games, but that's probably due to it being wrapped up in Sony, Disney, Marvel, all of that stuff together. But there's other ones that you would put on a Mount Rushmore of PlayStation characters that don't appear. And yeah, it's strange. I think the cameos are excellent and they get really deep, but without saying who they are, there's a few surprises that are amazing surprises as gaming characters, but not as PlayStation characters.
Never associate them with PlayStation.
Yeah.
I know some of the ones you mean, but again, like, I'm happy to see them there. It's like, oh, because those are as you get further along it, you start thinking, oh, they've not done, and you're thinking of PlayStation characters, you go, they've not done him yet, they've not done her yet, they're not in it yet. So when you get a non-PlayStation character, it takes you completely by surprise because they're not in your mental list of ones that you've yet to find, and you go, oh, I wasn't expecting.
You start doing like the business case of like, okay, if they've got him, they're probably okay with him in there.
Exactly.
And then towards the end, it's pretty funny because there's a few levels that are just like, oh, we've not referenced this PlayStation franchise at all. All three of them are in this level. You get them like really quickly. Like, it's been shown in pre-release stuff, but Metal Gear gets a great run out. Like, the third level in the game is absolutely chock full of Metal Gear. Metal Gear gets more characters in it than like The Last of Us does, so it's there's clearly different levels of the relationships they have with those companies, but I think they pretty much nailed it. What else they nailed is there are 5 PlayStation Hero levels. We'll only talk about the ones that they've publicly spoken about, which is the first 2.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, like as well, like, because they told me that during the visit. And I would have enjoyed the game more if I didn't know.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll say now, if you're listening to this, I'll put a time code. We'll talk for a few minutes about the PlayStation Hero levels. These have been talked about in pre-release materials, but they are pretty special. So here is your last warning. I'll give you a time code to come back to. So these PlayStation Hero levels, Astro gets the ability of PlayStation Legends. First being Spike from Ape Escape, Chris Scullion. They made a new Ape Escape in 2024. How are you feeling?
I should think so too.
Yeah,
it's an absolute disgrace that it's gone so long without making one. Yeah, that was a nice wee bonus. If like it's all you're doing is catching like loads of apes.
Yeah,
that was a bit cheap. There are a few moments throughout the game where like you think, oh, there's 300 bots in total. And then at one point you catch like 5 generic ones at once, and you go, oh, wait a minute. But yeah, that was it was good to. That was one of the examples I was talking about earlier of how these that was the stages I was referring to where the mechanics just change altogether just for one stage to kind of say, what if this game was an Ape Escape game instead? And then you get to try that, and they do that a few times with other games. But yeah, it was good.
The other one they've shown is God of War Ragnarok. They just made the Leviathan axe, which is insane because all the pre-release talk at Santa Monica was like, we spent years on this axe, and then Asobi's like, what if we just make it? What if we just make the Leviathan axe functions exactly as you'd expect it to? They do a remix of the God of War music where like the beat drop is Kratos going, boy, like it's so great. Like the way we'll get onto the music in a minute because it's one of the best game soundtracks ever, but the way they treat the PlayStation stuff there is brilliant. I think they shoot their muck somewhat in the way that they order these hero levels, and that they're a few of them are very modern focused, but I suppose it's the kind of thing that it'd be difficult some franchises are kind of difficult to emulate. There's no Last of Us one, for example. Astro isn't like in a 30-minute cutscene just sitting looking sad, but
see, but it's fine though, because without spoiling anything, obviously we've just spoken about the first 2. I think the 3rd and 4th are better than the first 2.
Oh really? Because
I preferred those ones.
Okay, because for me, I thought the God of War one was the best one from like from a mechanical perspective. But yeah, those are great. But we'll park it on those just so people can come back. But the soundtrack, my God, can Scotland do any wrong? An absolute banger. Kenny Young takes the Astro's Playroom soundtrack was already fantastic. He brings those songs in, remixes them, and then adds like 10 or 15 new tracks. Chris Scullion, what a banger of a soundtrack.
Yeah, it's an absolute beauty. I mean, the main theme is still a rip-off of Starlight by Muse, but other than that, it is genuinely, like you say, one of the best game soundtracks ever made. It's like, there was times where I was just kind of stopped and kept it running and went back on the PC to do a bit of work and just left the music running in the background, which I rarely do with games. It's genuinely fantastic.
I mean, obviously,
it starts to reuse some music near the end, but I mean, so what?
Kenny Young of Little Big Planet fame.
Yeah,
It is
Tearaway
kind
as
of
well.
funny how much of a handover there is there.
Yeah, there's a nice media molecule plinth in the Crash site. They get special treatment compared to a lot of other franchises, and I did like that. Yeah, it's just amazing that. So a lot of the stuff could be really corny if done by other people. Like the first level has a song that one of the lyrics is like, "You got a name," and then it goes, Astro Bot, and it's like, at that point it's like, this is amazing. I'm so happy to be back playing as this character. And they don't really have to double down on the stuff like in Playroom where they had an entire song about how a GPU works. Like they could have just done more of that crap and it'd be like, here's a song about Uncharted.
Isn't there a bit where there's
a
rapping tree?
Oh yeah. The trees also dance. Like the mushrooms, sorry, they dance to the beat.
Level.
Like it's so stuff touches like that are so kind of Mario-ian, if that's a phrase, like that level of like polish, and it just all works so well together. There's no part of it that fell down for me at any moment. There's no time during the experience from booting it up to getting the platinum where I was like, maybe do something else. I was always like, just show me more of this. Show me more of what you've got. Show me more of these.
I want to like
cameos.
end this call so that I can go and play.
Go and play. Yeah, it's really special. With I don't know what we can say more than you. It's an absolute necessity.
Go and buy it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. Sorry, go. What you going to say?
No, I was just going to say we'll probably close it off soon because it'll get to the point where we're just like, this
so much
of
is
amazing.
The brilliance of the game is the imagination, right?
Yeah,
and it really, like, I don't want to talk about that because I would have enjoyed it way less if someone had just gone, oh, this bit and that bit and this bit and that bit.
Yeah.
I almost feel like you probably shouldn't be listening to this anyway if you could just get it.
Yeah.
I don't think we've spoiled much, but even the stuff we have talked about, I would have enjoyed it more if I didn't even know that. But I think we're probably...
Good job, guys.
Yeah. I think that's a bit naive to assume that people are listening to this and they haven't watched the trailer or...
Yeah, we've only kept it to what Sony is currently putting out on their socials and stuff like that. We'll do some conclusions. For me, it's easily my game of the year. It's the most fun I've had with anything in ages. It's such pure joy. Like after I platinumed it, I felt absolutely hollow that I had nothing else to play in the game. And then I started a new save to capture some more footage. And I'm like halfway through it already again because it's just like, even if you've done it once, like just playing it through again, getting the bots and all that stuff, it just feels great. It never loses its shine. There's no dip in momentum. It's all just go. There's amazing Lost Worlds that we've not even talked about because you should just go and look at them for yourself. They also introduced mechanics that are seen nowhere else in the game. It's a real triumph, and I really hope that the lesson within PlayStation is more of this kind of stuff.
But in 2024, it feels like the lesson could be like they just closed them. It just sort of seems like that's what happens these days, isn't it? Oh, this has gone down brilliantly. We should close these guys.
They'll pull it from sale after 3 weeks.
If that happens,
so buy it on day one if you can, just in case.
No, in all seriousness, I think it does really. It establishes Team Asobi as a top tier studio.
Oh yeah,
I mean we kind of knew that before, but to have a full release game that's not a VR game, that's a proper mainstream game, now I think really properly puts them on the map. And the same with Astro Bot as well. Kind of your review says that he finishes it as an icon, and I think that's fair. I think it really is. He is the PlayStation mascot now. He's kind of organically grown in the last couple of years. Like they've had him out at the Champions League final and stuff like that. And if you go to their PlayStation office in Japan, he's like, he's out there in like a statue of him and stuff like that. But it doesn't feel. It feels real now. Like it feels organic. It's it's a wonderful game. I think everyone should pick it up. especially if you like this genre, and especially if you have kids as well.
If you like fun,
it's definitely it's definitely. I think. I mean, platforming is my favorite genre. I've literally written a book about platform games, and like this is easily one of like the top 3 or 4 of all time.
Yeah,
I would say. Like I'd still think Odyssey just pips it, but again, like I say, we're talking millimeters of a distance between them. It's like it's in no way disparaging.
If I was going to go for Odyssey, like if I was going to go, I don't want to say it's better than Odyssey, but I think it's as good. If I was going to, like, the argument for Odyssey to be better, it would just be like it's just bigger, and it's got obviously more nostalgia to dig into. That's all I'm thinking. Like, I think if this game was twice as long, then you'd be going, "Oh, hands down is better."
I just felt by the end of Odyssey, I was still kind of trying new things and getting like, because it's
the platforming mechanics are very good in
and it's designed to reward experimentation, whereas Astro Bot is more linear.
In
a way they're two completely different types of games, because one's linear.
There's definitely more depth in the platforming in Odyssey, 100%.
But again, we're talking it's so high up that you could genuinely have an argument, and just as many people would prefer this to Odyssey, and it would be the reasons for it would be just
on the flip side. There's more memorable levels in Astro Bot, and there are more moments where I said "wow" than in Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for that reason, it could either one could be better depending on personal tastes, and that alone, I think, when you're comparing it to one of the greatest games made by one of the greatest greatest publishers and developers of all time, I think that speaks volumes about how fantastic it is.
Yeah. For me, the only thing that could get it in a fight is Galaxy, and I've not played Galaxy in a long time.
If we're going to go far back, I would say Galaxy is still my number one. The Galaxy games,
but the fact that it's in that conversation is ridiculous. Like
100%,
it's unbelievably good. And for me, like, PlayStation, I've said this to Chris a lot, PlayStation for me is Chris's Nintendo. Like, that is where all my nostalgia is. That was what I was brought up on. That was my platform. So a game that I already think is a 5-star, stripping all the PlayStation stuff with all that PlayStation stuff done really well, and not done in just like here's an advertisement for all our stuff, because half the characters in the game are in games that you cannot currently buy on the PlayStation 5, so it's not even like half the characters are from Japan studios that they fucking bend.
And you can tell, right? You can tell this by playing the game, but having spent like a lot of time with the development team, they're massive fans of all these games that we're comparing this to as well. Like, they'll be so chuffed that they're in the same breath as these games.
Easily.
I think the best compliment I can give it is something we said earlier, was that if this was a Mario game, you wouldn't blink.
You wouldn't blink, yeah.
The fact is that through the entire history of platform games, nothing comes close to a Mario game, even though you get people saying, Sonic 2, but you put Sonic 2
is not even
next to Mario 3
universe.
Or Super Mario World, it's nowhere close. This Team Asobi, I think, is the first company who has made a Mario tier platformer that isn't Nintendo. And
since like 90s Rare, maybe.
I'll give the N64 era Rare then.
But since then, Nintendo just pulled so far away with those games,
and no one has ever been able to catch up with them up until now. This is like, since the N64 era, this is the only kind of non-Nintendo Mario tier platformer, I think.
Yeah. I would pay £30 for 30 new levels tomorrow if they just want to keep adding to this with all of this stuff they've already built. Keep doing it. It's really magical. If you're still listening to this and you're on the fence, get your head examined, go and play Astro Bot. It's out tomorrow at the time of recording. A wonderful, wonderful game, and I think it will take a real megaton to shake it from the top of lots
Balatro
of games.
Expansion.
The Balatro expansion isn't until 2025, so I mean, that's the fact that it's in the conversation with Balatro should tell you what VGC think about Astro Bot. Okay, there is tons of Astro Bot coverage on VGC that you should go and check out, including my review and Andy's huge feature about his time at Asobi. We're going to let him go to work on that and not play Astro Bot. If he pops up on PlayStation, he's getting battered by Chris, not by me. Until we are back, say goodbye, Andy.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye, Chris.
Goodbye, Chris.
You can support VGC on patreon.com/videogameschronicle, and we'll see you next time.